Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. Since 1923, the Spengler Cup has been a regular fixture in the international hockey calendar every season. Held in Davos, Switzerland between Christmas and New Year, the invitational tournament sees half a dozen teams from across the sport compete for the highly coveted trophy over a 5-day span. Though the contestants vary from one year to the next, each competition always includes the host team HC Davos, a Team Canada roster comprised of non-NHL players, as well as several other European teams from such leagues as the KHL, the SHL, the Finnish Liga, the Swiss National League and the Czech Extraliga. With the tournament holding such a well-respected position in the sport, and with the trophy being handed out nearly every year for the last century, the competition was bound to have a number of NHL alumni join its ranks over the years. Whether they found themselves in Switzerland after being regulars in the league for much of their pro careers, or they left North America having cemented their place as a legend of the game. And include those players, it has. So in today's video, join me as I take you through my list of the top 10 former NHLers who played in the Spengler Cup. Now before we start, I just want to mention that I'm not including any players on this list who only took part in the tournament while the NHL was in the midst of a lockout. Believe me, there are enough players who suited up in the competition while still being active NHL players to make a whole mini-series on this topic, so I will only be looking at players who found themselves in Davos while they were no longer contracted to an NHL team, they were in the midst of a brief hiatus from the league, or they suited up at the event multiple times during their career. Now that's out of the way, let's get on with it, shall we? Kicking things off at number 10, we have DOMINIK HASEK. One of the most talented goaltenders to ever play the position, DOMINIK HASEK would find himself at the Spengler Cup during the twilight year of his Hall of Fame career. A 10th round pick by the Chicago Blackhawks back in 1983, HASEK wouldn't make his first appearance in the NHL until the 1991 season, a whole 7 years later. Once he finally made the move across the pond though, the Czech netminder wasted little time showing just how talented he really was. In fact, the Dominator would go on to play parts of 16 seasons in the league, where he posted a 389, 223 and 95 record, a 2.20 career goals against average, and an astonishing 922 career save percentage in 735 games. As you might expect, these incredible numbers helped him earn a plethora of awards, including 2 Stanley Cup championships, 6 Vezina trophies, and 3 William M. Jennings trophies for the lowest goals against average in the entire league. So yeah, the guy had a pretty good career. Following his cup-clinching season with the Detroit Red Wings in 07-08, the 43-year-old decided to call it a day on his NHL career for the third and final time. That said, he wasn't done playing pro hockey just yet. After sitting out the entirety of the 08-09 season and spending the following 09-10 season back home in the Czech Extraliga, HASEK took his talents to the KHL as he joined Spartak Moscow for the 10-11 season. During his lone year in Russia's top league, the 46-year-old would not only produce impressive numbers in the K and earn an appearance at the KHL All-Star Game, he would also make the trip to Davos in order to compete in the 2010 Spengler Cup. Unfortunately though, the netminder was unable to put his Hall of Fame talents on display, since he posted an 0-2-0 record and a 4 goals against average in 2 games, as Moscow finished at the bottom of their group. Not exactly his greatest performance, but considering the legendary career that he produced and the vast treasure trove of awards that he won, I don't think he was too upset to miss out on this trophy, do you? Next up at number 9, we have Scotty Upshall. The most recent player on this list to have played at the event, Scotty Upshall wasn't the most productive scorer during his career, but that didn't stop him from putting up decent numbers during his brief trip to Switzerland. The 6th overall pick of the 2002 draft by the Nashville Predators, Upshall would suit up in parts of 15 seasons in the NHL, split between half a dozen teams, where he scored 138 goals and 285 points in 759 games for his efforts. After spending the 17-18 season with the St. Louis Blues, the Canadian forward would forego playing during the 18-19 season after being unable to secure an NHL contract, before lacing up his skates again and trying his luck overseas for the 2019-20 season, as he signed a 2-month tryout deal with HC Ambri Piotta of the Swiss National League on November 4th, 2019. In the midst of this tenure though, Upshall would shift his allegiances back to his homeland as he joined Team Canada's roster for the 2019 Spengler Cup. In fact, Upshall's 2 points in 4 games at the tournament would help Canada make it all the way to the playoff final, where they would defeat Czech side Oceláři Třinec and clinch the trophy for the 4th time in 5 years. Having lifted his first championship in over 15 years, Upshall would return to Ambri Piotta's roster for the next few months of the Swiss League season, and though he would score 7 points in 12 games with the team, the forward didn't stick around until the end of the year. Despite signing a 1-month extension on January 3rd, Upshall would depart from the team at the end of this deal and announce his retirement from the sport on February 22nd, 2020. Hey, at least he got his hands on some more silverware before he called it quits, eh folks? At the 8th spot on this list, we have NIKLAS HAGMAN. The entry with the most Spengler Cup games under his belt, NIKLAS HAGMAN enjoyed playing at the tournament so much that he kept coming back for more. A 3rd round pick by the Florida Panthers in 1999, HAGMAN would take to the ice in 770 NHL games over 10 seasons with 5 different teams, where he scored 147 goals and 301 points in the process. After splitting the 11-12 season between the Calgary Flames and the Anaheim Ducks, the Finnish forward would spend the next 2 years of his career plying his trade in the KHL, the Swiss National League and the Finnish Liga, before finally returning to his homeland for good during the 14-15 season. From there, the Finnish forward would end up spending 3 more years back home before hanging up his skates at the conclusion of the 16-17 season. Now, when it comes to HAGMAN's experience at the Spengler Cup, the forward ended up making the trip to Davos on 3 separate occasions during his career. Suiting up for the host team during the 2004 tournament, HAGMAN's 2 points in 5 games would help Davos win the trophy against HC Sparta Prague, before he would return to the tournament roughly a decade later in order to take part in the 2014 tournament with Finnish Liga side Jokerit. In fact, the forward would also join Jokerit during the 2015 tournament, but neither of his more recent trips would be as successful as his first, as he scored just a single point in 5 games to bring his totals to 3 points in 10 Spengler Cup games. Not the greatest scoring pace in the competition, of course, but he did win the trophy during this span, which is more than some of the other players on this list can boast, you know. Moving on to number 7, we have Alexei Yashin. The most productive player at the tournament on this list, Alexei Yashin certainly put his high-scoring skills on display when he made the trip to Switzerland. The first overall pick of the 1992 draft by the Ottawa Senators, Alexei Yashin would spend parts of 12 seasons in the NHL, split between the Senators and the New York Islanders, where he scored 337 goals and 781 points in 850 games. Oh, and he was also named a 3-time All-Star too, so he had a pretty good run all things considered. Following his final year with the Islanders during the 06-07 season, the captain of the team would head home to Russia for the following 07-08 season, where he would end up spending the final 5 years of his pro career. After a pair of seasons with Lokomotiv Yaroslavl, the former first overall pick would take his talents elsewhere in the league, as he signed with SKA St. Petersburg for the 09-10 season. During his tenure with the team, Yashin would also make the trip to the 2010 Spengler Cup, and to say that his time at the tournament was a success would be an absolute understatement. The Russian forward would end up scoring 6 points in just 4 games to help St. Petersburg defeat Team Canada in the finals and win the trophy during their first trip to the competition. If that wasn't impressive enough though, Yashin's strong play also earned him a place on the tournament's all-star team as he tied for 2nd in scoring, so I think it's safe to say his time in Davos was a success, don't you? In fact, this trophy would be the first and last championship of Yashin's pro career, as he would be unable to get his hands on the Gagarin Cup either with St. Petersburg during the 2011 playoffs or in his final year with CSKA Moscow during the 11-12 season, so at least he was able to end his career with a trophy in his cabinet. At number 6, we have SANDIS OZOLINS. The first of 2 defensemen on this list, SANDIS OZOLINS is the only entry in this video to have played at the competition while serving as the captain of his team. A second-round pick in the 1991 draft by the San Jose Sharks, OZOLINS would take to the ice in 875 NHL games over 15 seasons split between half a dozen teams, where he scored 167 goals and 564 points for his efforts. Not only that, he was also named a 7-time All-Star and won the 1996 Stanley Cup as a member of the Colorado Avalanche. Not a bad career if you ask me, folks. Following a 39-game stint with the Sharks during the 07-08 season, the Latvian blue liner would leave the league behind and take a year-long hiatus from the sport before signing with the KHL's Dinamo Riga for the 09-10 season. Having returned to his homeland for the first time since the early 1990s, the defenseman would spend the next 3 seasons in Riga and waste little time becoming an integral member of the roster, as he served as the captain of the team for the entirety of his tenure. In the midst of this stint, OZOLINS would join his team in Switzerland as they took part in the 2011 Spengler Cup, and though his production was far from its usual high standards, he still had a pretty successful trip. The Latvian defenseman potted just a single point in 4 games and was named to the tournament's All-Star team after he helped to lead Riga all the way to the final before they were defeated by the host side HC Davos. Having come so close yet so far, OZOLINS would spend the rest of that year, as well as the following 2 years in the KHL, split between Riga and Atlant Maitishi, and though he would be unable to get his hands on a Gagarin Cup championship during this span, he would be named a KHL All-Star in both years, meaning he would end up attending the event in 4 of his 5 years in the league. Sometimes home really is where the heart is. Halfway through this list now, at number 5, we have DOMINIK Moore. One of the more recent players to suit up at the tournament, DOMINIK Moore may have found himself in Switzerland during his final year as a pro, but he certainly didn't show his age. A 3rd-round pick by the New York Rangers during the 2000 draft, Moore would spend parts of 14 seasons in the NHL, split between 10 different teams, where he scored 106 goals and 282 points in 897 games. Though he spent much of his career as a bottom 6 forward and was rarely considered for any individual accolades, Moore would receive an award during his career, as he was given the 2014 Bill Masterton Trophy for sportsmanship and perseverance. After spending the 17-18 season with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and with him receiving little to no offers from across the league for the following year, the Canadian forward decided to accept an invitation to join Team Canada's roster for the 2018 Spengler Cup, in order to see if he still had some gas left in the tank. Though he hadn't suited up in a pro hockey game in over half a year, the former 3rd-round pick didn't skip a beat, as he potted 2 points in 4 games to help Canada make it all the way to the final before they lost to Finnish Liiga side Kalpa in a penalty shootout. Despite leaving the competition empty-handed, Moore's strong play would earn him a contract elsewhere in Switzerland, as he signed with the Zurich Lions on January 7th, 2019. Having taken his talents overseas for the first time in his career, the forward would spend the rest of the season with the team, but would struggle to find his rhythm as he scored just a single point in 11 games. In fact, this disappointing stint would be the last time that Moore would play professional hockey, as the 39-year-old retired from the sport soon after the season had concluded. It may not have been the ending he was hoping for, but at least he got to represent his country for the very first time before calling it quits. Next up at number 4, we have Curtis Joseph. The second of 3 goaltenders on this list, Curtis Joseph would use his time at the Spengler Cup to not only show that he could still play at a high level, but he would also secure the penultimate contract of his NHL career. Having gone undrafted during each of his years of eligibility, Joseph would spend the next few years plying his trade in the juniors and the minors, before finally earning a place in the NHL during the 89-90 season. From there, the Canadian netminder would go on to play 943 NHL games over 19 seasons split between half a dozen teams, where he posted a 454, 352 and 96 record, a 2.79 career goals against average, and a .906 career save percentage in the process. These numbers would rank Joseph 6th all-time in games played and 7th in wins by a goaltender in NHL history, while also helping him win the 2000 King Clancy Award for his leadership and humanitarian work. You would have thought that a guy who played over 940 games and won over 450 of them would have received a few more accolades during his career, but I guess not. After spending the 06-07 season with the Phoenix Coyotes and having produced his worst individual numbers in over a decade, the aging netminder would find himself without a team once the 07-08 NHL season got underway. In order to prove that he still belonged in the best league in the world, the 40-year-old would join Team Canada's roster for the 2007 Spengler Cup. Once he arrived in Davos, Cujo would put on an absolute clinic, as he posted a 3-0-0 record and a 1.95 goals against average in 3 games, to help Canada defeat Salavat Yuleyev in the final and win their first trophy in 5 years. Not only would he lift the first championship of his entire career, Joseph would also find his way back into the best league in the world, as he signed a 1-year deal with the Calgary Flames on January 14, 2008. In fact, the undrafted netminder would end up spending the remainder of the 07-08 season, as well as the following 08-09 season in the NHL, and though he was clearly past his prime, he was still able to be a serviceable player in the league. Given that he ended up playing 2 more years in the NHL after the competition, I think it's fair to say that Joseph's performance at the Spengler Cup played a significant role in extending his NHL career by a few more years. Looks like the tournament has its uses after all. Moving on to number 3, we have Ed Belfour. The goaltender with the most NHL games on this list, Ed Belfour would end up playing at the competition a mere months before his legendary career truly kicked off. Another undrafted player during each of his years of eligibility, Belfour would spend the following few years of his career in the juniors, the minors, and the NCAA before getting his first shot in the NHL during the 88-89 season. Though some might have expected his NHL career to be brief, Belfour would end up sticking around for quite some time, as he went on to spend parts of 18 seasons in the league, split between 5 different teams, and post a 484, 320 and 125 record, a 2.50 career goals against average, and a .906 career save percentage in 963 games. As well as sitting 4th all-time in wins and 5th all-time in games played by a goaltender, Eddie the Eagle would also get his hands on the 1999 Stanley Cup, earn the Vezina Trophy twice, the William M. Jennings Trophy 4 times, and be named a 5-time All-Star. Not bad for an undrafted netminder, eh folks? Before his long and successful NHL career really got started though, Belfour would find himself at the Spengler Cup during a season-long hiatus from the league. After spending the 88-89 season split between the Blackhawks and their minor league affiliate, Belfour would play the entirety of the 89-90 season with the Canadian national men's hockey team, where he would travel to Davos and take part in the 1989 Spengler Cup as a member of Team Canada. However, it wasn't one of the greatest performances of his career, as the 24-year-old posted an 0-2-0 record, a 6 goals against average, and a .844 save percentage in 2 games, as Canada missed out on a trophy by finishing 3rd place at the tournament. Despite this disappointing performance, Belfour would return to the Blackhawks roster once the 1990 playoffs began, secured his place on their roster, and the rest is history. See, the Spengler Cup isn't just for older players in the final years of their career, you know. Penultimately, at number 2, we have Sergei Zubov. The first of 2 entries on this list with over 1,000 NHL games played, Sergei Zubov would compete for the Spengler Cup well before his long and successful NHL career even began. A 5th-round pick by the New York Rangers during the 1990 draft, Zubov would go on to play 1,068 NHL games over 16 seasons split between the Rangers, the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Dallas Stars, where he scored 152 goals and 771 points for his efforts. Though he would never earn any individual awards during this span, he would get his hands on several championships, as he lifted the Stanley Cup in 1994 and 1999 with the Rangers and the Stars respectively. Before he made the move to North America though, Zubov would become the first player on this list to compete in the competition before ever suiting up in a single NHL game. Playing for CSKA Moscow during the 91-92 season, the Russian blue liner would travel to Switzerland and take part in the 1991 Spengler Cup. In fact, the 20-year-old would produce a pretty strong performance at the tournament by scoring 3 points in 5 games, as Moscow defeated HC Lugano in the final and won their first trophy at the event. Once the tournament came to an end and the team returned to Russia as the victors, Zubov would spend the rest of the year back home before moving to North America the following season and embarking on his Hall of Fame career. So it's safe to say that things worked out pretty well for him, both at the competition and in the long run. Before we reach the top spot of this list, I would like to give a quick honourable mention to STACY ROEST. Now, ROEST may not be the most well-known player on this list, as he suited up in only 244 NHL games and scored just 76 points in that span, but his lengthy career in Switzerland and his impressive numbers overseas saw him suit up at the competition on 6 different occasions as a member of Team Canada. During this span, ROEST scored a grand total of 24 points in 27 games, which ranks him as the 2nd highest scorer in Spengler Cup history. Not only that, he also sits 14th all-time in games played, and he helped Canada lift the trophy during his first trip to the event back in 2003. Sure, he may not have won the award as many times as he was hoping for, but cementing your place as the 2nd highest scorer in a tournament that's been around for almost 100 years sounds like a pretty impressive achievement to me, folks. And finally, at number 1, we have Glenn Anderson. One of the most successful players in NHL history, Glenn Anderson takes the top spot on this list, having taken part in the tournament during the final season of his Hall of Fame career. A 4th-round pick by the Edmonton Oilers back in 1979, Anderson would earn a place in the Bigs during the 80-81 NHL season, where he would end up sticking around in Edmonton for a very long time. Not only would he spend 17 years in the league, split between 4 different teams, and end up scoring a whopping 498 goals and 1,099 points in 1,129 NHL games, Anderson would also win 6 different Stanley Cup championships, 5 of which with the Oilers dynasty of the mid to late 1980s, and his last one with the New York Rangers in 1994. He won a lot of trophies, folks. Following a brief return to Edmonton during the 95-96 season, after spending the last 4 years elsewhere in the league, Anderson would take his talents overseas and return to the DEL's Augsburger Panther for the rest of the year, a team he had played for during the 1994 lockout. From there, the Canadian would spend the following 96-97 season elsewhere in Europe, split between the Swiss National League and the Italian League, but he would also find himself at the 1996 Spengler Cup as a member of Team Canada. In fact, Anderson's 2 points in 4 games at the competition would help Canada defeat HC Davos in the final and clinch their 2nd consecutive trophy at the event. Interestingly though, it appears as if Anderson may have also been included on Canada's roster for the 1994 Spengler Cup a few years prior, but there is no record of him having played any games or scored any points at the event. By the looks of it, Anderson had likely agreed to play in the tournament as the NHL was in the midst of a lockout, but with the league finally getting underway less than 2 weeks after the tournament concluded, Anderson probably had to pull out at the last minute and head back overseas so he could get ready. Say what you want about his career though, but Glenn Anderson sure knew how to win championships. And that was my list of the top 10 former NHLers who played in the Spengler Cup. What do you guys think about this list? Did you know that each of these entries had played in this historic tournament, or did I miss someone completely obvious out? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Carl Fairbank, Chris Gadsby, Connor B, Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, Jordan Whitehead, Saturn Otaku, The Legacy, Tom from Finland, Twin Sanity Dad, and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.